Hi, this is Shyla Lawrence at Nash Community College, and for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about factoring the quadratic trinomial ax squared plus bx plus c using the AC method. Now we have already learned that if a quadratic trinomial is factorable, then either a common monomial factor can be factored out or it can be factored into two binomials. You may have already learned how to factor polynomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c using the FOIL or guess and check method. The AC method is a much more concrete and methodical method that will lead you to the factorization without any guessing. One very important skill you must have in order to be successful with the AC method is a solid understanding of factoring by grouping. So the first thing I want to do is by grouping. This type of factoring is most commonly used when there are an even number of terms in the polynomial, such as 2 terms, 4 terms, 6 terms, 8 terms. The terms are split into two groups, and the greatest common factor is pulled out of each group separately. The goal of factoring by grouping is to have the same expression remaining in the parentheses after the GCFs are factored out. If so, then that expression can be factored out of both terms. Example, we want to factor by grouping the polynomial x cubed minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 8. Since this polynomial has 4 terms, it may be a good candidate for the factoring by grouping method. First, we split the polynomial in half and use parentheses to represent the two pieces we have created. So I am going to collect x cubed minus 2x squared within a set of parentheses and 4x minus 8 within another set of parentheses. Next, we're going to treat each group like its own individual factoring problem and pull out the GCF for each of them. For x cubed minus 2x squared, the GCF is x squared. So for my first group, I factor out x squared, and when I do that, I have left in the parentheses x minus 2. For my second group, 4x minus 8, the GCF is 4, so I pull out the 4 and I have left an x minus 2. And notice that in both of those separate factorings, x minus 2 is left in both of them, and we need those two pieces to match in order for this to work. Since both of those pieces have an x minus 2, we can factor the x minus 2 out last to get our final answer, which is x minus 2 times x squared plus 4. Now that we have a quick review of factoring by grouping, we are going to use that for our AC method for factoring polynomials that resemble ax squared plus bx plus c. And there are two main parts to the AC method. The first part is splitting apart the middle bx term into two pieces, because right now I only see 3 terms in that polynomial. In order to use factor by grouping, we would like to have an even number of terms, so we are going to split apart the bx term into two pieces, thus turning the polynomial into a 4-term polynomial. And then once we do that, all we have to do is factor by grouping. To get this ready is the splitting apart of the bx term. The way we split apart our bx term comes directly from the name of this method. Our first step is to multiply the a and c values together. For this AC value, we need to find a factor pair that adds to b the b value. This factor pair contains the coefficients of the two pieces we are going to break bx into. Once we have the polynomial written with 4 terms, all we have to do is finish by factoring by grouping. Example, we want to use the AC method to factor 3x squared minus 11x minus 4. First, we multiply the values of a and c. In this example, a is 3 and c is negative 4. So a times c will be 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12. We need to make a list of factor pairs for negative 12, which are all of the pairs of numbers that multiply to make negative 12. And some of those are negative 1 times 12, 1 times negative 12, negative 2 times 6, 2 times negative 6, negative 3 times 4, and 3 times negative 4. All of those pairs multiply to be negative 12, but only one of them is going to work for us in this situation. We want to choose the pair that add together to make our b value, which in this polynomial is negative 11. So we are going to choose the pair 1 and negative 12 because they add together to make negative 11. This factor pair tells us the coefficients to use to split apart negative 11x into two terms so that we can perform factor by grouping. So instead of 3x squared minus 11x minus 4, we are going to rewrite the negative 11x, and our entire polynomial will say 3x squared plus 1x minus 12x minus 4, and the plus 1 and minus 12 still combine to make negative 11, so it's still the same polynomial. And we got the positive 1, negative 12 from our factor pair. That is the magic pair that's going to allow us to do factor by grouping. So I'm going to split apart my four terms into two groups. I'm going to group together 3x squared plus 1x, and I'm going to group together negative 12x minus 4. Notice that since that third term starts with a minus, I put it inside. It goes with the 12. So I put it inside, and I need to have a plus in between those two pieces. For my first group, 3x squared plus 1x have an x in common, and when I factor it out, I'm left with 3x plus 1. And remember, our goal with factoring by grouping is to have the exact same thing left in the second group. So in order to have 3x plus 1 left, I see I can pull out a negative 4. When I do that, I'm left with 3x plus 1. Now both of my groups contain a 3x plus 1, so I can factor out 3x plus 1 and get my final factorization for this polynomial, which is 3x plus 1 times x minus 4. You can always take those two factors that you found and FOIL them back out to check to see if it gives you back your original polynomial, and that will give you just some final confirmation that you did it correct. A little bit quicker. We want to factor using the AC method, and our next example is 2x squared plus 11x plus 5. Our A value here is 2 and our C value is 5, so we need to multiply them together to get 10. Next, we're going to make a list of factor pairs for positive 10, and we want to choose the pair that adds to be 11. So we're going to choose 1 and 10. We are going to use the 1 and the 10 as the coefficients to break apart our bx term. So instead of 2x squared plus 11x plus 5, we will have 2x squared plus 1x plus 10x plus 5. Finally, we just need to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group together my first two terms, 2x squared plus 1x, and my last two terms, 10x plus 5. Our first two terms have an x in common. So when I pull out x from 2x squared plus 1x, I'm left with 2x plus 1. My second pair of terms, 10x plus 5, have a 5 in common, and when I pull them out, I'm left with 2x plus 1. Now both of my groups have a 2x plus 1, so I can factor the 2x plus 1 out to the front, and I'll be left with x plus 5. So our final factorization and our final answer is 2x plus 1 times x plus 5. And again, we can FOIL that back out and check to see that it gives us back our original polynomial to make sure it's correct. For our last example, we want to factor using the AC method the polynomial 8x squared plus 2x minus 3. In this example, our A value is 8 and our C value is negative 3, so we multiply them together and get negative 24. We need to make a list of factor pairs for negative 24 and choose the factor pair that combines to make our B value of 2. The factor pair of negative 4 and positive 6 add together to make 2. So those are the two coefficients we are going to use to split apart our B value of 2x. So instead of 8x squared plus 2x minus 3, we are going to write 8x squared minus 4x plus 6x minus 3. We will finish by factoring by grouping. So I will group the first two terms together, 8x squared and minus 4x, and I will group the last two terms together, 6x and minus 3. And we treat these as their own individual GCF factoring problems. 8x squared minus 4x have a 4x in common, and when we factor it out, we're left with 2x minus 1. 6x minus 3 they have a 3 in common, and when we factor it out, we're left again with 2x minus 1, which is perfect because that's exactly what we need to see in order for factoring by grouping to work. Since both of these groups have a 2x minus 1 in them, our last step is to factor that 2x minus 1 out to the front, and we will have a 4x plus 3 remaining as our other factor. So the complete factorization of the 8x squared plus 2x minus 3 using the AC method is 2x minus 1 times 4x plus